Hey, hi everyone. I know everyone anyway. Um, Thanks very much for coming. Great. Thank you. Great. That's very intentional. Thank you very much. Hey. There's a few live streamers watching, which is great. Who it is, I don't know. I've got a couple of friends here, IRL as well. Two handsome boys. If you haven't seen this before, my name is Harry Wright. This is a work in progress of a show called Smalltown Boy, which we'll be doing the Camden Fringe eventually on 4th of August. For those that aren't aware, work in progress is basically a sort of 45-minute test out of ideas of where the show's at so far and kind of bits and pieces I've got. I would say probably 65% is funny and 30% could be worked up to being by then, and 5% isn't, but there isn't anything to replace it. Okay, great. Let's start. Great. I'm gay and autistic, by the way, if anyone doesn't know. Which means do like big butts, cannot lie. That's how that works. I was diagnosed when I was quite little with autism, not homosexuality. That's not how that one works. And I think I've always kind of been quite literal-minded. I remember being 6 years old and refusing to drink 7-Up because I wasn't. Later on, I went on to university, later in life, not straight after the 7-Up. And when I was there, I got an email from somebody on the welfare board that said, "To all those with autism, Asperger's syndrome, and other autism spectrum conditions, please come to a meetup on Wednesday and make new friends." I remember thinking, that's a great idea. Let's put a subset of people who famously don't like new situations and unfamiliar environments in a massive room with 25 to 50 strangers. I went to this and there was no one else there. I can only assume everybody else is driven off by the number range 25 to 50. If you're going to try and get autistic people to socialise, at least give us some prime numbers to be going on with. But I do a lot of charity gigs. I did a gig for an autism charity, and they try to be really inclusive. And they've given everybody a sticker to wear saying, "I do/I don't wish to be interacted with by the comedian." Fuck, grief, at least guide dogs get to wear a sign saying, "Please don't touch me, I'm working." But this geezer came up afterwards and went, "Oh, you don't look very autistic, mate. You're also quite mild." I'm not a corner. Also, Dad, you was at my diagnosis, so I don't know what's going on there. But it's quite kind of. I didn't used to be like this. I used to sort of fit in with the other boys and used to laugh at their jokes, used to get their humour. And then one day at work, I had my flu vaccine, and now I'm gay. Vaccines don't cause autism. A cute doctor giving it to you does make you gay. It's 100% how it works. I'm turning my COVID one down. Just don't want to turn neurotypical. It's going to happen. It's sort of difficult to fit into environments sometimes. It's difficult to fit in at work. I work in an office, and I found out I worked with this girl that's 19, and she didn't know what Easter was. Like, she wasn't from a religion that didn't celebrate it. She'd just grown up, never been taught the Easter story. Now I'm 30 in a couple of years, and I don't think I'm old at all, and I thought I'd be able to explain it to her in sort of terms she'd understand. I said, you need to think of it like Craig David. Met a girl on Monday, took her for a drink on Tuesday, nailed to the cross on a Friday, and arose on Sunday. But being 19, she was far too young to have heard of 7 Days by Craig David. This is ridiculous. I felt so old looking at it, and that was my first favourite song. I would have been about 11 or 12 when it came out. First crush, I think, in some ways. But I read in the paper recently that he's a Tory voter. Now, that's fine. It's not my views. It's fine. It happens. But Will Young's still Labour. And I think it's not so bad when one of your first two wanks still shares your politics 15 years on. For any straight people watching on live stream, that's the equivalent of Jodie Marsh coming out as a communist. And it happens. But it's quite an odd one. I don't really sort of fit into either environment. I don't really sort of fit into the gay world or the autistic world. I think it's because people sort of don't really understand what autism is. And it's sort of seen as a disability when it isn't. And I went on a date with a guy once, and he was getting to the point where he was being quite discriminatory. And he kept insisting it's a disability. He kept saying it's a disability. It's a disability. You're disabled. It's a disability. He kept saying, "Have you ever experienced ableism?" Yes, from you at this point right now. But then afterwards, he kept going on about it, and I had to explain it to him. And I said, "Look, what that means, mate, is it's not a disability. It's more like a different operating system, which means you, Windows 98, me, Linux. My dick, area of outstanding natural beauty. Yours, site of special scientific interest. My special interest ordnance survey maps, get used to it. But people often sort of ask what my mind's like. I'm so autistic, my to-do list just says make more lists. And as a queer boy sort of on the spectrum, I'd say my two biggest fears: 1, complex emotions; 2, complex carbs. But people sort of often ask how appropriate it is. Can you stand up here, Harry, and tell these jokes? Yeah, I can. I think I'm autistic myself. I can sort of talk about it and joke about it. But people have a really odd view of what punching up is. I think queer people like me, we know that punching up, you know, if I make a joke about a straight person or straight culture, that's punching up, it's not punching down. Straight people think punching up is what I do when I'm fisting a man. But like, yeah, it's quite difficult to sort of fit into either environment, because I've got quite kind of straight interests in some ways, and that's what this show's about. You know, I've never really kind of fitted into either world, and it's I've never really kind of grown up with any male role models. I didn't really have a father figure around growing up. I've never really had kind of male queer friends that I've relied on. I've sort of had to learn it all for myself, and that's what this show's about, kind of how you find that in your life, and how you sort of eventually learn to find your own identity. And I think part of it for me was because I'm a gay guy with straight taste. I'm very aware that he's AKA bisexual. I'm aware that's how that works. My friend Tom's bisexual, by the way, and like his mum asked him about it, and he said when he came out to his mum, he tried to explain it to her by saying it means I like Dick and Eminem, and she was more angry about the latter. She was like, I don't care what you like, but he's a shit rapper and a misogynist. He hasn't been relevant for 15 years. Get yourself sorted out, son. But like, it's, yeah, I'm a gay guy with straight taste in some ways. I'm a sports gay as well, which means a gay man that likes sports. Like, it's harder coming out as that than it was as coming out as gay in the first place. That was the more difficult of the two. We had a coming out party for me as a sports gay. Speaking of which, why do we call it coming out and not bender reveal party? But like, we had a coming out party for me as a sports gay, which means we went down the pub to watch the boxing. And we were watching the Tyson Fury fight, and my friend Ben said, oh, I don't understand why you like this. You know, it's just people hitting each other in the head. It's not interesting or entertaining. I had to explain it in terms he'd understand. I said, Ben, you know how you really like Lady Gaga? And you know how some other gays really like Ariana Grande? And you know how you like going on Twitter in your pants and sending death threats to the ones that really like Ariana Grande? Yeah, that's like this, but somehow with less nudity involved. And you went, oh yeah, that is me. I think I'm a sports gay too. It's like, Ben, no. A sport is a very important, very specific thing. You know, people have got seriously injured. People have lost their career. People's lives have ended playing sports on the sports field. And you went, oh yeah, that's me too, because I've got carpal tunnel and banned off Pornhub. It's not quite the same thing, but like, it's the thing is, I like quite problematic sports as well. I like sort of boxing and wrestling and MMA, and like, a lot of people in these fields are very homophobic, and it feels hard liking them. I can't really justify it to myself. A good example of this is Dana White. Dana White is the guy who runs the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and he was a big kind of redneck Trump. You know when you get bald, straight guys that look like they're about to sort of be the first person to die from exploding at any point? That's him. And like, he put loads of events on sort of during the pandemic, you know, with no proper safety precautions. He was a big Trump voter. And it feels really bad supporting him. The worst thing as well is like when he puts men in cages and makes them fight, he's a billionaire. And when I do it, it's BDSM and I'm banned from the zoo. But like, it's really bad. And I like watching fighting, but I don't want to give him my money. I haven't legally bought a fight in ages. I don't want to give that bastard my money. I illegally torrent them instead, because I prefer giving my money to Rupert Murdoch, who supplies my Sky internet. That's how you stick it to a man. I think if you're like me, just pay the other man. 100% how it works. But like, it's an odd one. There's a lot of people in that world who aren't very savoury. There's a boxer called Ryan Hall, who I liked watching. And I found this out, guys. This is awful. He defended Hitler. You know, he did. He said Hitler had some good points. It's a really disgusting thing, and it makes me feel sick to have ever watched or supported him. But what it shows is how we see violence as normalised. You know, we see violence and aggression like this as a normalised thing, and it means that views like that can start to filter into society and be okay. For the fact that the word martial arts in itself, you know, is an example of this. Martial arts is not an art. You know, Van Gogh wouldn't have been a better painter if he'd gone 12 rounds of Conor McGregor beforehand. But somebody would still have lost an ear. But like, it's the fact that it shows that we sort of see it as a cultured thing that's acceptable. You know, violence and fighting should be, you know, as if violence or fighting was something that should be put up on display in a gallery, you know, and then viewed and loved by all, much like gay sex, rather than sort of something that takes place down a dark alley like 4 a.m, also like gay sex. But like, it's really odd how these things work. Because Ryan Hall, before defending Hitler, I found out about him, and he'd done some good things in life. One time in 2006, he held up a robbery at a KFC, you know, and prevented the branch from being robbed. But even the coverage of it showed how normalised violence is and how it's romanticised and exoticised. What it said was, the newspaper coverage said, he demonstrated an immaculate chokehold on the robber. I really don't think he did. I don't think he went like that, and the robber just went, fair fucks, mate, that is impressive. I'm just going to turn away from a life of crime from here on out. But like, I'm very aware that's a wanking gesture as well, but I don't know what a chokehold looks like, I've not seen one. But like, it sort of shows how normalised it is. And another sort of problematic figure in these things is Guillaume Rigondeau, who's a boxer, not a 19th century French aristocratic homosexual. And I used to quite admire him when I first found out about him, because he has autism fighter written on his trousers. You know, he fights to raise money for his little daughter that's autistic. And when I looked into it a bit more, I realised this is pretty problematic, because the charities he's promoting actually promote some pretty dodgy autism cures. You know, it's not a disease, it doesn't need to be cured, and I can't get on board with that anymore. Also, he's doing a shit job of being an autism fighter. A real autism fighter would come up to the ring with music in perfect 12/8 time. You know the exact ratio and angle of every shot you were going to throw. Be world champion in an instant. I'd like to take him on myself, you know, come up to the ring, the music would be playing. I'd walk up to him and I'd say, actually, Guillaume, it should be autistic fighter or fighter with autism. Autism fighter is a grammatical solecism. And he'd be so impressed to just give me the championship. And then I'd team up with his little daughter and we'd just go around the world solving crimes. But the thing with the Ryan Hall thing, I think what happened, bear in mind this is a sport where people, unfortunately, you know, get hit in the head a long time. There's a lot of association with sort of concussion, early brain injury, and sometimes you forget what you're saying. And not to defend it at all, it's a really disgusting thing to do. But I think what he meant to say is hipsters have some good points, and something got terribly lost in translation. I think he was out for a coffee, and somebody asked him what he thought, and somebody said, you know, what do you think about gentrification in the area now? And he went, you know, nobody can afford to buy a house anymore, sort of more middle class people are moving in, it's pushing racial minorities out of the area. But this croissant is fucking lovely. Hitler had some good points, alright Ryan. But yeah, I've sort of never really fitted into either environment, and I think it's sort of in my cultural taste as well. I'm a big music lover, and sort of like all straight white boys, and all sort of white boys that have identified as straight at one point, I almost exclusively listen to rap and hip hop. I think with this though, I love the music, but it bothers me as someone with a sort of literal mindset, because I think sometimes rappers make threats and then don't really understand what they're saying. I listened to one song where the guy said he was going to kill the opponent, and then he was going to go to the guy's funeral, and he said, yeah, I'll be sitting in church with your family, singing Away in a Manger. Away in a Manger is not sung at funerals. This is a bloke that's 36, I looked this up, and has never went to a nativity play. Like, I get it though, because my mum's a primary teacher, and her theory is that who you play in a nativity play when you're little always reflects who you go on to be as an adult. Now, it might sound pretty strange. It does work. It works 100%. The girl in ours who played Mary did get pregnant at 15 and claimed she had no idea how it happened. If you want to know who I was King Herod and then the innkeeper, and might seem quite an incongruous pair of characters, but it's true. Like, it is exactly who I am now. Because I do hate kids and often say there's no room, they'll have to go around the back. But like, I've sort of never really... I wasn't always a sports gay. I don't play, by the way. I used to sort of skive off PE at school. When I was 17, 18, my first boyfriend and I sort of met at that age, and we used to skive off PE to... I would say it's what you think sex is when you're 17, 18. That was what it was. And we thought we were being so fucking clever. But looking back on it now, the teachers must have known what we were doing. I know this because one time when we were trying to hurriedly leave the field of play and enter a different field of play, our PE teacher said, Harry, are you sneaking off to bum a fag again? I was put in a very difficult position. That's the thing, that could mean anything as well. It's such a diverse phrase, like bum a fag while stuck in traffic on the A52, you know, while waiting for the bus, and bum a fag at Christmas with your uncle, you know, while selling the big issue. The worst thing as well was, like, they called my mum to tell her about it, and I didn't want to come out to her, so I had to tell her I smoked just to calm her down. And she said, she's a smoker as well, and she said, are you telling me you're getting involved in a dangerous habit that's going to dramatically affect your social life? Yes, I am, but not in the way you think. But like, there's still a lot of homophobia around, and I'm pleased we're out of lockdown, because I've been trying to get more involved with LGBT culture before the pandemic. And the other week, guys, I did the gayest thing I've ever done. I went to a sauna for the first time. Not a sauna that Swedish people go to, like one that men go to. And I'd never been before, I didn't really know what to do, and I went into one room and there was two men like fucking another guy, and I didn't know whether to like leave, say, oh no thanks, not for me, and I panicked, and my sports gay brain got in the way, and when one of them came inside him, I turned around and shouted, "Goal! Back of the net, son! What a strike!" So it's not allowed to go there anymore. The thing is, these places get quite a bad reputation though. They're seen as sort of quite seedy and salubrious, even in our community. And I think it's homophobic, it really is. It's exclusionary of some queers. Because if you're poor like me, you can save a lot of money if your social life purely takes place in saunas and bathhouses. So being autistic, I've done a little mathematical breakdown of it for you. So, firstly, you've got your £15 entry fee. You might think that's quite expensive, but you also get to sit in the lobby and watch RuPaul's Drag Race repeats on Netflix without paying £10 a month for a subscription. I usually steal a towel away. A towel's, what, £4.99, minus 40p to get the old man stains out and you're breaking even. Usually I'd have a shower there, and rather than showering at home, that's about £1 off your water bill. Sitting in the dark room rather than just sitting home wanking in the dark, that's an estimated 0.04p off your electric bill. And when he comes down your throat, that's £12 a month in protein shakes. And that's an estimated £12.046p saving in total. And back home in Yorkshire, where I'm from, that's a deposit on a house. Want to break out of the working class? Suck dick. But like, it's a weird one, and I've been trying to kind of play into this. I've been sort of sleeping with a lot of older men recently. Like, I don't want them for their bodies, I don't want them for their money. It's just rich people have really nice shower gel, guys. There's no way around it. That's the main reason. I went to one guy's house once, and he had Alberto Balsam, something I'd never even heard of. I didn't even know it existed, and like, I was super impressed. But when I got in the shower, I realised the Alberto Balsam bottle was full. And I thought, I can't be rude, I can't be a bad guest and like open a new bottle and use it. And then I saw a little travel bottle next to it that was about sort of 3/4 full of sort of white liquid shower gel, and it had a little, and I thought, okay, I'll use that instead. Sort of clicked it off, rubbed it onto my hand, started rubbing it in, and then I thought, hang on, this feels kind of sort of sticky. And then I carried on rubbing it in, normally I'd like take my pants off while performing this, but there's 3 people watching that might be heterosexual, so I can't justify it. Finished, and then I thought, hold on, this doesn't smell of anything. But then again, I don't know what posh people use. Like, I just use a Tesco one that's made from Polo Mints and Fear, so I don't know what to. And then I carried on rubbing it in and thought, hold on, it isn't washing off properly. And then I thought, but then again, I don't know what posh people use, and so I finished my shower 40 minutes later, got back into bed, and he said, oh, you feel nice, babe, you feel very smooth. And at this point, I let my guard down and gave the game away, and I said, oh yeah, it's that nice shower gel you've got. And he said, what, the one of a little white bottle? That's lube. Like, I said, how was I supposed to know I don't use? He said, did the letter L written on it not tell you? I thought, fucking, how should I know? I thought it was left-handed. But like, looking back at it now, like, I don't think that was a class thing. I think that's an autistic thing. Because sometimes we get language and abbreviations quite mixed up, and we need things to be explained to us quite literally. And I've always been really crap with abbreviations. Literally, until last week, I thought GF on restaurant menus stood for gay friendly. I honestly thought, like, the lasagna will suck your dick, but the bronze support cops at Pride. A gay friend of mine is autistic as well, and genuinely thought it stood for girlfriend. Just some really bratty gay guy being like, bread with no wheat, girlfriend. That's me and my 6 other gay friends at our local organic bakery. They hate us. But like, it's weird. I'm having to go back to my old school in a few weeks for a school reunion. I'm not really looking forward to it. And I'm thinking a lot about sort of what it was like to be queer growing up and sort of what it was like to find my identity. And I don't want to say it was a shit school, but they've got a wall of fame there with students that went on to great things. This one girl's on it, and her achievement has been on Sun Sex Suspicious Parents. That was the whole achievement. Like, she wasn't even the main character. But that said, Stripper 1 is not bad for your first big TV role. That's my little cousin Rosie, so proud. It's not her really, but like, they're if you haven't seen this programme before, they're making the gay Sun Sex Suspicious Parents now. And if you haven't seen this programme, basically, kids go on their first lads and their first girls' holiday, and then their parents watch them from an unmarked van like a serial killer and comment on their behaviour. It's appalling. They're making a gay one. Like, I'm too old to go on, but I'd like to apply to actually be the narrator. I think I could add something different to it. I think I could add a sort of David Attenborough vibe to it, and I think he'd be the perfect narrator for something like this. I can see him. I'm going to do the voice, by the way. It isn't 100% accurate. He sounds more like sort of Ray Winston, but I'm going to... that's where we're at so far. I think, you can picture a sort of boy walking into a club and Attenborough commenting on it and narrating it and going, and for the first time, we see the mating routine of the straight male. As, after consuming 6 WKD blue, he approaches the female and says, "Alright girl, we're just down for a Wolverhampton for 2 weeks, what's your name?" Unfortunately, this is unsuccessful, and as she moves away from him, he moves into the second part of the ritual. "Have you ever been to 5th base with a guy?" "What do you mean there's no 5th base?" "Oh, she's fucked off now. Kyle, she's gone. Where's she gone to? Does anyone know how to suck their own dick?" But I'm sort of not really looking forward to going back. It's a bit of a weird environment. I think I've been sort of thinking about a lot of my education. I think it was quite homophobic. And the most homophobic thing that ever happened though was when we had sex education. Now, I think everyone's probably had some sex education at some point. Nobody ever has anything LGBT themed. It just never happens. There's never any LGBT themed sex education. And it means some stuff kind of gets lost in translation a bit. Firstly, you always have sex ed from one teacher you don't want to have it from. Ours was in her late 60s, and she was best known other than this for making up politically correct terms for things that didn't need them. One time she was doing a lesson about homelessness and said, blah, 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 tramps. Oh my god, sorry, people of the road. People of the road is not a term. That's what your dad calls his Christian biker gang. Like, if you're going to use the word, just use it, just say it. Like, I don't like faggot. Like, I think it's a really offensive, homophobic word. I don't like being called it. But I don't just call myself differently straight. But, like, we were having a lesson from her, and this is what her sex education was. The lesson, the, like, actual theme of the lesson was quite sensible. You know, it was about healthy relationships. It was, you know, don't just date someone based on what they look like. You know, it should be about their qualities, and that's a good lesson to learn. But what they did was they gave around templates where all the boys got given a silhouette of a woman, and all the girls got given a silhouette of a man, and you had to write on desirable qualities in a partner. Now, obviously, all the boys took this deeply seriously and just wrote, oh, big tits, nice ass. And I was sitting there, and I knew I was queer at this point, and I had my woman template, and I didn't really kind of know what to write on. I was really worried about it. And I tried to kind of copy the other boys so I wouldn't get outed, but my autistic brain got in the way, so I sort of went for medium ass, like tits at 89-degree angle, and I got hauled up in front of the head of year. And I was sitting in his office, and I didn't plan on sort of coming out to anyone. And I said, sir, this lesson is exclusionary. You know, what if you have any LGBT students who might want this same, you know, the same gender silhouette? What then? What then? And he understood what I was saying. He said, okay, Harry, I'll give you the male template if you promise to do it properly this time. And so I got my male template, and I sat down to write on it, and I thought, I can't have this, I'm going to be outed here. And I tried to copy what the other boys have done, and I thought, I've just got to try and fit in at this point. And so I took my male template, and I wrote, big tits, nice ass. And this time he gave me a merit mark for being body positive. But yeah, it's, I'm going home in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to going back to see my mum. It's just my mum and I, it always has been. And it's a nice environment, and yeah, it's, I don't know. She's kind of quite accepting of stuff, but sometimes she tries to be quite progressive, but gets it wrong. I'm not out to her properly, and I sort of worry she didn't want a queer child. But it must have been quite obvious in a way. She's got 3 sisters. Her and her sisters are called Bernie, Phil, Joe, and Nikki, and there are no lesbians in that bunch at all. How? And I worry, like, my grandma was just trying to give them increasingly mass names until, like, she had a lesbian by default, and it just hasn't happened, so it's just skipped a generation. But yeah, it's an odd one. She's on her own. Her and my dad are sort of separated and have been for quite a long time, and she gets lonely sometimes. And she told me the other week that she was going on a 3rd date with someone, and then she said it was a pig farmer. Bear in mind, we live in rural Yorkshire here, and just for a little sense of how ridiculous this place was, I talked a bit about music earlier on. Right. When I was a sort of teenager and growing up, I listened to absolutely standard teenage boy music for that time. I listened to, like, the Kaiser Chiefs, the Killers, sort of standard teenage boy music. Other kids I knew listened to their dad's heavy metal. That is what it was. It was Deep Purple and Whitesnake. It was a hard world for a gay bitch. But, like, I was once called gay for not listening to Kiss. Just to sense how ridiculous that is. That's 4 boys in full drag and makeup, not gay. Me having sex with teachers on my free periods, gay. That's a ridiculous set of standards. But I talked to my mum about this, and she said she was going on a 3rd date with a pig farmer. And I asked her, like, how she'd sunk this low, and she said, oh, he's the only man under 30 stone in my joint pain class. How have you got to this point? How do I kind of explain that she's got worse taste in dick to her, like, without coming out to her? I want to help her, but I don't want to out myself, and there's just no way to do it. But then something else, like, we like doing together, and when we're at home, is we like watching really bad TV to kind of take us out of the situation sometimes. I was home once, and Jeremy Kyle was on, which, by the way, has been cancelled for 5 years. She's saving up those Sky repeats, like, she's saving them up. And it was on, and the theme of the episode was 2 women who were looking for their long-lost sister, and they were trying to find her. And the producers found her, and they brought her into the studio, the long-lost sister. You know, they were really excited to see, you know, there was hugs, there was tears, they were crying, they were delighted to see each other again. And then we all sat down, and then Jeremy Kyle said, could you tell us how you lost touch with your sister? And one of the women said, I don't know, we just moved and stopped ringing her, really. How do you deal with shit like this? Like, admittedly, that was like my Auntie Pam, my Auntie Susan. Like, they're disgraced in the family now, but, like, you know, you've got to watch these things back sometimes. But the other programme we love watching, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's on the Gentleman's Channel, BBC 3, was Britain's Sexiest Hoarders. Now, I love this, but it bothers my autistic brain a lot, and I don't think my mum understands it properly. We were watching it the other day, and they were in the hoarder's house, and she went, oh, the place looks like it's been burgled. No, it doesn't. Burglary would be removing things from a person's house. That would be improving the situation. My Uncle Pete's a hoarder, and, like, I love him, but I almost want to burgle his house just to remove the stuff from there, just trying to help him out. This is a guy I have seen try and get 50 tins of beans for a 5 items or less item aisle at Tesco. I think it was 50 anyway. I was furious about him not saying 5 items or fewer, as it correctly should. But like, this is the thing, where does stuff like this end? If I take the stuff from his house and steal it and move it to mine, am I then hoarding by proxy? How do you get rid of it? There's no way to ever get rid of this. This is why fly tipping should be legalised. It's the only way just to get hoarders' stuff out of the cycle of society. I would vote green if it wasn't for this. I just don't want fly tipping to be illegalised, just because I want hoarders to be removed. This is the thing I sort of worry about, though. Like, I'm a left-wing boy, and then I kind of worry sometimes about... I worry about my politics going too far, because I worry about how I'll be perceived, you know, how people that might know me perceive me, and I don't want to be seen in that way. I worry about what my legacy will be. And this came to a head recently. I read an obituary of an anarchist writer, and the first line said, you know, about what he was a good guy, so he's a great husband and father, you know, he's a great man. And then the second line said, most people in our community will remember Matt from when he firebombed a bank. Like, it's fucking insane. What would my obituary say as well? I'm really concerned what it would say at this point, like if I died tomorrow. And it would say, Harry Wright, he was a good comedian. A great one in many ways. But unfortunately, his legacy was ended when he had to check into Twinks Anonymous for rehabilitation in 2022. He said in a statement of tabloids, I just love them. And after his show in 2024, The Joy of Beer Bellies, an hour-long show about the bear community, his career came to a head. A sad loss, another comrade lost to the great Twink Bear Wars of the long 2020s. But like, yeah, I've talked a bit about my mum. Her and my dad have separated and they sort of haven't been together for a while, as I've said. And I think he's autistic, I really do. Looking back at it now, I think that's how I got there. I know this because they're still in touch, and I rang up once and asked how he was, and Mum went, oh, you won't believe what he's done now. I said, what, finally realised that pikey's a racist term? No, much worse. He took a bag of his old clothes down to Oxfam, normal behaviour, and then returned the next day to check they were fairly priced. In terms of shit people can get up to, that is on a par with when I came in on New Year's Eve and saw him nailing an Eddie Stobart plate to the wall that he bought from eBay from a trucking company. Like, he turned around and went, shit, don't tell your mother about this. It was like, you've had affairs and that's what you're most ashamed of. Like, he was a sort of artistic guy like me. He was a creative guy. He was in a band when he was young, but were on the John Peel show. And I thought it was quite impressive, you know, the John Peel show. They had a Peel session. But afterwards they asked John Peel out for a curry and he said no, and that's his main claim to fame. Like, they were quite an arty couple and they must have been looking back. My mum was a stone carver. Like, if you want to have a queer kid, that's how you do it. Just be a fucking stone carver. It's a surprisingly butch job. Like, it's part of the, as I've said, the increasing trend towards kind of lesbianisation within the Wright family. And it's just ended up worryingly wrong somehow. But, like, she's always kind of... She accepts me as I am, but she's always kind of not wanted a child that isn't masc, and it's really strange. Because even when I have sort of tried to be more masculine, tried to have more masculine interests, she sort of made fun of me for it. One time when I was at primary school, when I was little, they had a Mother's Day assembly, and all the mums had to come in. This is fucking true. And they had to do a questionnaire, sort of with joke questions. And one of the questions was, what do you dislike most about your child? They didn't read out whose mum had said it, but they just read out some of the answers anonymously. And someone's mum, that wasn't any of the other boys' mums in my class, or any of the girls' mums, it was my fucking mother, wrote, it's having to clean the mould off my son's football boots when they're under the bed. I don't even play this sport apart from once a year. Let a bitch breathe. Like, let me be a princess for once in the year without complaining about it to 30 people. Yeah, it's... Sometimes, like, my dad used to kind of give me male advice, and it didn't really work out properly. And I've never kind of used any of it, now I've been older. And I first had to kind of use some the other day. I'm learning to drive at the moment, and want to be the first gay to drive. And I went out on my own the first time the other week, and I got up to a dual carriageway, and I was panicking. Like, you know, there was traffic flowing in both directions. I couldn't remember what to do. I couldn't remember which way to go. And I tried to think back to all the lessons he'd given me and think back to any advice, and my brain went completely dead. And the only thing I could ever think of that he told me was, when in doubt, pull out. So I did, and ran over a cyclist. But, like, the worst thing he ever said was sort of, I used to ask him about love sometimes, about relationships. And he said, oh, the first cut is the deepest, you know, the first time you fall in love will be, you know, the biggest thing that happens in your life. And as I've said, I was 16, 17 when I was dating a boy for the first time, and when he broke up with me, it was at the end of the school year, and we had to go on work experience placement my final year at school, because no fucker was going on to university. And they put up a little display up with where you went, what you did, and a picture of you on the placement. Now, the boy I was dating at this time was from a very horsey family. They owned horses, they weren't just... And And what you don't want to see when you're 17, you've just had your heart broken for the first time, is a poster of the person that did it to you with the caption, Dan Johnson, stud farm. Like, it's a funny one. We're at the sort of point now, how far are we in? Are we about sort of 20 minutes in, 25? I'd say so. I should probably brought my phone on. But yeah, we're at the point now where kind of people feel, oh, Harry, like, what's that emotional sort of hole in the middle of a show? And there's a confession I've got to make. The person I've talked about, that I've said is my dad, he's not real, ladies and gents. Like, the person I'm talking about, and always has been, is my uncle. He was a father figure to me, and I've always seen him as, you know, a father, and I sort of refer to him as dad on stage because it's easier than explaining it. You know, he's a single guy, he lives next door to my mum, because they're in the late sort of 50s, early 60s. It's just much easier to explain. And all the things that, I mean, by the way, like, that bitch 100% did get banned from Oxfam, that did happen. And he's banned from our Christmas dinner. His special interest is cycling, and he's banned from necessarily talking about saddle sores. He's not allowed at family events anymore. But, like, it's hard to explain. I realise I've lied about this for a long time because I've always kind of hidden behind other men in kind of finding who I am. I've always sort of hidden behind other people's queerness or kind of other people's ideas of masculinity. And I think, honestly, the best way to deal with it, and I've learnt this, is, you know, just be yourself. You've just got to find out who you are and just be that wholeheartedly and just live your real life. And so now there follows 5 minutes jokes about the microblogging website Grindr. If you haven't ever seen this, I do have a boyfriend now, and I met him on the old Grindr. If you've never seen this, it's basically the perfect dating app for autistic men. It's hundreds of men in 2x2 centimetre squares in a grid. We love it. But like, I go on there sometimes, and I was talking to this one boy, and he said, like, you have to write a bio and sort of fill in a little bit about yourself. And he said, so I filled mine and I put no Tories, obviously, because you've got to. And there's one lab message, and he said, I am right wing, but I've got a big cock, so you've got a choice to make. So I said the only thing I could say in response, prove it. So he sent me a photo of him holding his Conservative Party membership card. They say never meet your heroes, guys. Is how I ended up hooking up with Craig David. But like, when I was first dating this boy, like, he was living down in Cornwall, I was in London. And I used to go down the train a lot and sort of see him. It was a long distance autistic relationship, which means he has feelings, then I interpret them 3 weeks later. But like, I used to go down, and the ticket collector came round at one point and looked at my ticket and held it up and said, "Anytime day single." I was like, yes, I know, that's what we're trying to get away from here. But it's a bit of a funny one. And you know, I know it's the right one for me, because you know someone's the right person for you, you know, when they're compassionate, when it's someone you care about, and they can sort of see you at your bad moments, and that's absolutely fine. And there's a little story I want to tell to sort of finish off, and I'm well aware I haven't done about 45 minutes, but Ruben, how far are we in? Have you got?
35 minutes.
Smashing. Well, this will take another 5, so then that'll pretty much do it, and then I can just write 15 minutes and we're cool. But yeah, when I was 18, 19, I went off to uni. I was really excited to go. And I was a bit lonely when I was there. I didn't really know anyone. I hadn't really sort of got to know any other queer people. I was living on my own in halls. And I met a boy on the internet, and we started a relationship. He was from America. Now, this is how we met. It was on a forum for queer youth, and he was the moderator. And yeah, he 100% slid into the DMs and didn't get banned, and that's what sort of forum it was. And like, we ended up kind of going out for a little bit online, and I never actually went to America. I never met him in real life, but I felt I loved him, and I felt it was a real thing. And obviously things didn't work out, you know, it could never have worked out. But he used to send me little things, and I've got some of his stuff still. And I was having a clear out at home the other day, and I went through some of his stuff, and I found a Taylor Swift t-shirt that he sent me. And, you know, I picked it up, and it's still, I mean, I don't remember what he smelled like, I don't know, because he was in America, but like, it smelled of mothballs, and I'm assuming that was his smell. He was a librarian like me, so I'm just going to assume it was him and not the wardrobe. But like, it was lovely, like, and it really just brought it all flooding back, and I was really emotional, you know, seeing it and holding it, and there's a little letter that he'd written with it as well. And my boyfriend came in, like, saw me holding the Taylor Swift t-shirt, you know, and like holding this thing that somebody he'd never even met, you know, he was never going to meet, that was from another country, had sent me. And he saw me holding it and crying, and I felt so embarrassed, you know, here's someone that does care about me, and I'm sort of crying over this. And he saw me holding the Taylor Swift t-shirt, and this way I knew he was the right person for me. Because he just came up to me, you know, and put his arm around me, and just said, "Gay!" I'm going to do a couple of other bits that aren't part of the show just to test them out, seeing as I've got you here and you're unable to leave. Okay. Let me just test something out, just because we're here. These are very, very new. Another bit I sort of forgot to mention about, was about being sort of educated properly. I was talking about homophobic language that is used earlier. Our school luckily was quite an arty one. It had a focus on languages. So I came out of school speaking 3 languages, English, French and straight, which means I can now say hello, bonjour, and oh, I gather you wanker! The third one has definitely been the most useful. But like, yeah, what was the other bit? Alright. Thank you. Thanks, live streamers. This is fantastic for you to watch. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is it. That makes sense. And yeah, another bit I was going to do as well was I was talking about sort of having to talk about straight stuff with my dad/uncle. That sounds really sinister in a sexual way. Actually, I've just realised. Yeah, yeah. I was talking about having to talk about straight stuff, and one time, like, my special interest has always been sort of birds and nature and bird watching, and that's what I really love. And I was talking about this one. We were watching after a program about birds, and we've never kind of related in terms of interest really. And one time the cassowary came on, which is apparently the most violent bird in the world. And Attenborough said it's the most violent bird in the world, and he just looked at me and went, "He hasn't met the wife!" Like, as if he was any way relatable to me at all, a straight man. And like, my mum came in and laughed at that more than she's ever laughed at anything I've written. And they're not even fucking together at this point as well. Alright, thanks very much for coming, gents. Thanks to everyone watching live stream. I'm going to go away and write, but this will be a really useful exercise. The show itself is called Smalltown Boy. It will be on the 4th of August at 2 Northdown as part of the Camden Fringe. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can get in touch at HWright Comedy on social media, and we can get some tickets sorted out and see where we're going from there. Yeah, thanks very much. Good night. Enjoy Sue's Kempner if you're staying on later on.